Good day, dear student researchers. For today's session, we are going to talk about the conceptualization phase. Although I know most of you, if not all, have already started doing this phase, but nevertheless, we're still going to tackle this concept to help us better understand its processes. Now, before our discussion, let me review on to our nursing outcomes. Now, after 2.5 hours of varied teaching learning strategies, the learners will be able to describe the literature review in terms of its purpose, flow of task, and search strategies. Differentiate the perspectives of the quantitative and qualitative studies on literature review, and differentiate primary and secondary source of information. Number 3 is to enumerate guidelines in analyzing and synthesizing information in literature review and writing a literature review. The fourth objective is to identify strategies in searching for a research problem, refining a research problem, communicating a research problem, and developing a testable hypothesis. Now, discuss nursing theories, models, and frameworks as to its definition and their role in research. And the last objective is to also illustrate how to ground a research study from a nursing theory, model, and framework. Now, in your conceptualization phase, the activities done during this phase involves reading, conceptualizing, theorizing, and reviewing ideas with your colleagues or your team members. Researchers call on such skills as creativity with deductive reasoning or valid reasoning, and of course, firm grounding of the research topic. Now, let us first discuss what is literature review. Now, literature review is basically a published material providing an examination, or which provides an examination of recent and current literature. It also covers a wide range of subject matter at various levels of completeness and comprehensiveness based on all the analysis of literature that may include research findings. The work within your literature review can be characterized as a synthesis of material, and it's not just a summary. The review is guided by the researcher's curiosity. Why do you do literature review? It's because of your curiosity as a researcher of a particular topic or subject, may it be a disease, a condition, or a clinical occurrence. It can also be an opportunity for you to fill in gaps about the subject area. Now, initially, researchers typically conduct research within the context of an existing knowledge by undertaking a thorough literature review. Now, there is a debate. This is true to those researchers who will be conducting a quantitative type of study. They have to have literature review first before conducting data collection or interpreting their data collection. Now, literature review debate as to when to conduct such review is referring to the qualitative type of study. In qualitative research, or qualitative researchers rather, have varying opinions about reviewing the literature before conducting the study. In phenomenology, for example, the purpose of literature review is to expand the researcher's knowledge on the phenomenon from multiple perspectives. In grounded theory, researchers can typically begin with the collection of their data before examining the literature. As theory takes shape, it will be then the time for the researchers to turn to literatures and seek to relate prior findings to the theory. Phenomenologists and ethnographers, or because ethnography is also a qualitative type of study, they often undertake a literature search at the outset of the study. Now, regardless of when they perform the review, researchers usually include a brief summary of relevant literatures in their introduction. I'm sure you're also doing the same, no? The literature review summarizes current evidence on a topic and illuminates the significance of a new study. That is why, as part of your rationale or your introduction, you have to state there what is the purpose why such topic or why such research problem was identified by the group. Now, literature review are often intertwined rather with the problem statement as part of the argument of the study. Now, to give further the perspective of literature review from quantitative and quantitative, a good literature review requires thorough familiarity with available evidence, and upfront literature reviews are necessary. On qualitative studies, on the other hand, some qualitative researchers, as what we have mentioned, like your grounded theory or your ethnography, they may defer a literature review until after collection of data or until the analysis or during the interpretation phase. So the purpose of why we are going to do literature review is to develop and present a review of the literature which emerges from a desire to document the knowledge and ideas currently established concerning your identified topic. Literature review supplies the readers with a summary of accessible evidence, and it facilitates a discussion concerning the need for further study. Now, the main purpose really of having literature review is to identify what is known and unknown about an area that has not been completely resolved in practice. Now, literature review also provides the background and the context within which the research is conducted, and it also lays out the foundation of your study. And this is specifically true to the quantitative type of studies. Now, some of its purposes, they provide an overview, a summary, and critique of existing literatures. Second is it confirms the need for a new study. The third one is it demonstrates the writer's ownership of the literature and expertise on the topic. Now, in your book, it also has this flow task in a literature review. Now, conducting a literature review is also very similar to conducting a study. The review starts with a question. You formulate a question. You formulate and implement a plan for gathering these informations, and then later on you will analyze and interpret the gathered informations. So first step is directed towards really identifying your topic of interest. The author of a literature review must not ramble in the hope of eventually addressing the needed information concerning a topic. Reviews should be unbiased. It should be unbiased. It should be thorough, and it should be recent or up to date. Also, high-quality reviewers, or reviews rather, are systematic. Decision rules for including a study should be explicit, because a good review should be reproducible. It can be replicated, meaning that another diligent reviewer would be able to apply the same decision rules and come to a similar conclusions about the state of evidence on the identified topic. Now, there are many ways to search for research evidence or literature search strategies. We have ancestry approach, descendancy approach, gray literature, and the most common one is your bibliographic databases. For an ancestry approach, these are using citations from relevant studies to track down earlier research studies on the same topic. Descendancy is moving forward, finding a pivotal early study, and search forward in citation indexes to find more recent studies. With gray literature, these are unpublished, tracking unpublished studies with more limited distributions. And the last and the most common is your bibliographic databases. Bibliographic databases is using keywords, search features, and operators on electronic databases. Now, electronic databases, you can access this one by using a computer. Most databases can be accessed through a user-friendly software with menu-driven systems and on-screen support, so that minimal instructions is needed to retrieve articles. In an early task, in an electronic search, you can key in keywords to launch the search. Although I know that you're very much familiar with this one, we will just briefly go through your bibliographic databases. So for that keyword that you're going to input there in the search tab, the keyword is, it could be a word or a phrase that captures key concepts in your questions. For quantitative type of studies, usually your keywords are the independent and the dependent variables. Dependent and independent variables and the population or your research respondents. For qualitative type of studies, the keywords are the central phenomenon and the population of the study. Now, there are two common electronic databases for nurses. We have the CINAHL or your CINAHL. This is the Cumulative Index to Nursing and Allied Health Literature. You can access this one in your www.ebcohost.com/CINAHL. This is an important electronic databases for nurses. It covers references to hundreds of nursing and allied health journals, as well as to books and dissertations. It contains about 3 million records. It also provides information for locating references, like example, the author, the journal, the year of publication, etc., and abstracts for most of the citations. And in this database, links to actual articles are also often provided. A basic search in this database involves entering your keyword in the search field, and you can also restrict your search to records with certain features, like for example, only abstracts, or you can also have an option to have the advanced search mode. To a specific publication dates, you can also filter that one, like example, only those after 2010 or 2012. So you can have that option. And then you can also search for those articles or research studies or published in English, or those that are coded as a subset in nursing or the nursing profession. So the basic search screen also allows you to expand the search by clicking the options apply related words. Now, there are some features for an electronic search that are similar across database. You can have this feature such as your Boolean operator. Boolean operators are to expand or delimit a search. Like the three widely used Boolean operators are your AND, A-N-D, or and not, N-O-T, all in capital letters. And with, for example, if you're going to use the operator AND, capitals A-N-D, it will delimit a search. So for example, if we search for pain and children, the software would retrieve only records that have both terms. For the operator or it expands the search. So for example, if we type in pain or children, it could be used in a search to retrieve records with either of the term. Finally, if you're going to use the NOT, N-O-T operator, it narrows down your search. For example, if we say, or if we key in pain, not children, it would retrieve all records with pain, but it will not include the term children. There are also truncation symbols. Truncation symbols are those with an asterisk. It expands a search term to include all forms of a root. Like for example, if you search or if you type in child with asterisk, the computer would search for any words that begins with child, such as children, childhood, child rearing. No? In some databases, we also have wildcard symbols. Wildcard symbols are often your question mark or your asterisk as well. It is inserted in the middle of a search term. It permits a search for alternative spellings. For example, a search for behavio, BEHAVIO question mark R, would retrieve records with either behavior spelled as BEHAVIOR or behavior spelled in such a way with BEHAVIOUR. Okay, for each databases, it is important to learn that these special symbols are and how they work. It's very important to also note that the use of special symbols, while useful, may turn off also a software's mapping feature. One way to force a text word search is to use quotations as well. So quotation marks around a phrase, which yield citations in which the exact phrase appears in text fields. Like for example, if you would search lung cancer and you put quotation marks on this word lung cancer, it might yield a different result. So a thorough search strategy might entail doing a search with and without wildcard characters and with or without quotation marks. Another is your Medline. Medline is also another database for nurses. This is your medical literature online. You may also use those Boolean operators and to either delimit or expand your search strategy. So you can access your Medline with HTTP : / your www.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov/pubmed. Okay. Now for primary and secondary sources, literature review is with primary sources rather. These are research reports written by the researchers who conducted the study, and the second source is by someone else. So research reports prepared by someone other than the original researchers. Now when you conduct literature review, this would be an example of a secondary source already. Now, what would be your guidelines in analysis and synthesis of your literature review? Now, one method of organizing information from research articles is to use a formal protocols. Protocols are means of recording various aspects of a study systematically. It will include the full citation, theoretical foundations, methodologic features, findings, and conclusions. And evaluative information can also be noted. So your formal protocols can be used as how you can systematically organize these informations that you get from your literature review. So guidelines that is in your book, please refer to page 107 and 109. You have there the protocols. And for your matrices, your methodologic matrix is also used to record key features of study methods. So you have their different rows wherein each row is for a study, and columns are also there, which is you have there the methodologic informations. you want to capture across your studies. So to further understand what is formal protocol and methodologic matrix or matrices, please see this page on reflected on the screen. So it also identify important themes in literatures, like for example the patterns, the regularities, and if there are inconsistencies, and also determine which pattern is of greatest relevance to the study. So in writing a literature review, these are basically the guidelines, or how one should know that you have a high quality literature review. So these are the qualities. So the objective of your literature review is to reveal the current state of knowledge, and these are the qualities. It should be comprehensible. It identifies a research problem and indicates how it can be studied. It helps clarify and determine the importance of a research problem, identifies what is known about the problem, and identifies the gap in a particular area of knowledge. It provides evidence that a problem is of importance. The second one is a high quality review is systematic. It is systematic. Decision rules should be clear. Criteria for including or excluding a study should be explicit. Reproducible, I believe we have mentioned this a while ago. Reproducible, meaning it can be reproduced or it can be replicated. So another reviewer can apply the same decision rules and criteria and come up to a similar conclusion about the evidence. Not biased. So another desirable attribute of a literature review is the absence of bias. This is more easily achieved when systematic rules for evaluating informations are followed. Okay, although we could not help, although reviewers cannot totally elude personal opinions, for this reason, systematic reviews are often conducted by teams of researchers who can evaluate each other's conclusion, so not just your own. And the last one is insightful. Finally, reviewers should strive for a review that is insightful and is more than the sum of its parts. So reviewers have an opportunity to contribute to the knowledge through an astute and incisive synthesis of the evidence. Now, on to the second part of our objectives or learning outcomes is your research problem. Every research study begins with a problem the researcher would like to solve. For such a problem to be researchable, it must be one that can be studied through collecting and analyzing data. Now, because there are some problems, although they are interesting, are by nature not appropriate research problems because they are not researchable. So these problems, examples of which are those problems involving moral and ethical issues. These are not researchable problems because the solutions of these problems are based on an individual's values. Now, studies begin much like your evidence-based practice efforts as problems that need to be solved or as questions that need to be answered. Now, here are some of your sources for research problems. A number of sources from which researchable problems can arise and are available. You can have your personal experience, whether as a healthcare professional or as a consumer of healthcare. That is a rich source. So you can have the nursing literature, can also be a valuable source for research problems, particularly for the novice researchers. So for example, the researcher might identify a topic of interest and then review the nursing literature to determine which kinds of studies have been done in that area. Seeing how other researchers have approached a problem can often spark new ideas and perhaps point to studies that would benefit from replication. Another would be from theories. No, theories from nursing and related disciplines are another source of your research problems. Researchers ask, if this theory is correct, what would I predict about people's behavior, states, or feelings? No, the prediction can then be tested through research. Another source could be your social issue, social science and political issues of relevance to the healthcare community. Another is your clinical experience. For clinical experience, may it be your observations as well for the staff nurses experience, or you as student nurses, your experience when you had your rotations or an exposure to the hospital or to the community setting. And of course, external sources from other agencies or through brainstorming and etc. Now, how do we refine a research problem? Here are the steps in developing a research problem. So you have to select a topic. When you select a topic, you have to jot down areas of interest and put ideas on your paper. Now, when you select a topic, please do not think first of what type of research method you're going to use for a particular topic or problem, because it might limit your options. No, it might limit your options to generating a research problem or a topic. Another is you narrow your topic. So apart from those topics that you have written down on your paper, then now you select and narrow down the list. So narrow down the topic, transform a generic topic into a workable problem. Usually, beginning researchers develop tactics that are too broad and too complex, so researchers move from general topics to a more specific researchable problem. So for example, if your topic would be on immunizations, it would be better to narrow it down to a specific, more researchable problem. So with immunizations, what particular vaccine would you like to study on? Is there a would your topic benefit the nurses, or is it your study is more onto the population? So you can do that with narrowing the topic. And of course, evaluating the research problem. So when you evaluate the research problem, the researchers must determine the significance of the problem, its researchability, its feasibility, and of course, not to forget your interest of the topic. Okay, so an important criteria that can be used to determine significance of the problem to nursing is that will the stakeholders benefit from the findings of the study? When we say stakeholders, these are your patient, the nurses, and basically the healthcare community. Another is feasibility. Feasibility refers to whether the study can be done. So it includes considerations such as the cost, financial aspect of the study, the availability of the facilities and equipment, the cooperation of the others, interest of the researcher, and of course the expertise of the researcher on that chosen topic. Now, currently with our ongoing issue with the pandemic, it is also important to note on how we are going to gather the data later on. That would also be part of the feasibility of the problem. Now, evaluation criteria for research problems, this is to elaborate on it further. Significance of the problem, will it contribute, as what we've mentioned, no? Stakeholders, so is a problem important to nursing and its clients? Will the patient care benefit from the evidence? Will the findings challenge untested assumptions? And then with researchability, the amenability to research inquiry. Questions of moral and ethical nature cannot be researched. So as what we have mentioned, that there are problems that is not researchable, and these are those problems concerning ethics and morality as what was mentioned, because the result would be dependent on the values of a particular person. And of course, with feasibility, meaning that can the study be implemented? So there are a lot of considerations to your time, availability of your study participants, cooperation of others, facilities and equipment. Of course, with money, that would research budget would allocate to personnel costs, participants cost, your supplies, printing and duplications, your equipment, if you have any laboratory fee, or even your transportation. And then of course the experience of the researchers, and of course ethics. Now that is why before we proceed to data collection, we have to undergo with ethics first, ethical review of our study before proceeding to data collection. Last one, of course, is your researcher's interest, your interest. So genuine fascination and enthusiasm to pursue the study. So do not take a topic which you are not personally inclined. You are bound to regret the choice later. And it would be very, very difficult for you to write down and put time and effort to doing the thing that you do not like. So it would be best that the topic you have chosen or the problem that you have identified should be of your interest. Now, when you communicate research problems, we have these components. We have the problem statement, statement of purpose, and your research questions. Your problem statement, it articulates the problem and describes the need for a study. Problem statements presents the idea, the issue, or the situation that the researcher intends to examine in the study. So the statement should be broad enough to cover the concern prompting the study, yet narrow enough to provide direction for designing the study. It can be conceptualized in the form of a declarative sentence or a question. Now, on the other hand, you also have your statement of purpose. Statement of purpose is to just summarize your study goals. It's easy to identify your statement of purpose because you'll be using terms and words that would really tell that this is the purpose, the statement of purpose. And of course, your research questions, these are the specific queries, specific queries to be answered in addressing the problem. Now, here are the components of your problem statement. For problem statement, this is basically the foundation of your study, and as such is usually preceded by several paragraphs of background information that set the stage for the proposed study. These paragraphs identify the following. You have the problem identification, what is wrong with the situation. You have the background, what needs to be understood by the reader. Third one is your scope, like how big is the problem. The fourth one is the consequences, what would be the cost if you're not going to fix the problem. Number 5 is the knowledge gap, what is not known about the problem, and what is your proposed solution, or how would the study solve the problem. That is for your problem statement. So an example of a problem statement is for example, is your humor and stress. Okay, so you have there those that we have identified as the contents of your problem statement. Okay, so if we say problem identification, try to check if you have that on this particular slide. If the background is also there, if the scope is there, if the consequence is there, if there is a knowledge gap, and what is the proposed solution. Okay, another this is the continuation rather of the previous paragraph. And your statement of purpose statement of purpose also summarizes the study goals. Components of your statement of purpose is in your quantitative study is your variables. In your qualitative, it's the phenomenon and the population. Well, of course, population as well with your quantitative. Statement of purpose articulates your research goal in the statement of purpose, and this is usually worded declaratively. The purpose statement establishes the study's general direction and captures its essence. It is easy to identify, as what I have mentioned a while ago, because you'll be using words such as the purpose of the study is to, or the aim of the study is to, and the objectives of the study is to. Now, these words are used explicitly. That is why it's easy for you to identify and make statement of purpose. Now, wording for statement of purpose, as what I have mentioned, you can have the purpose of this study is to determine, or the aim of the study, or the purpose of this study is to explore, or the purpose of the study is to describe. No, for example, statement of purpose, it does not only communicate the nature of the problem, but also how researcher intends to solve the problem. Like, for example, when you say the purpose of the study is to explore and describe, then the researchers are using the phenomenology approach. If the purpose is to understand, discover, develop, and generate, you are for grounded theory. Another is test or evaluate. It also suggests an experimental type of design. So here are some of the examples of statements of purpose for a quantitative study. Our example would be stated this way: the purpose of this study was to determine the incidence of and associated risk for falls and fractures among adults 12 to 60 months after they underwent Roux-en-Y gastric bypass for morbid obesity. For the qualitative study, our example statement of purpose would be: the purpose of this study was to explore the characteristics of and the context related to sexual behaviors among institutionalized residents with dementia. Now, for your research questions are the specific queries to be answered in addressing the problems. These are the interrogative rewording of the statement of purpose. Now, for example, if your statement of purpose is to assess the relationship between the dependency level of renal transplant recipients and the rate of recovery, your research question would be worded this way: what is the relationship between the dependency level of renal transplant recipients and the rate of recovery? Now, with research question, it is more specific than the problem statement. In addition, research questions are frequently used to guide studies that are exploratory in nature and aimed at describing variables or perhaps identifying differences between groups in relation to these variables. Now, with research questions, it also guides studies that examines relationship among variables, as what is stated in our example. And in a qualitative studies, research questions guiding these types of studies are limited in number and generally broad in scope. For hypothesis is a prediction of almost always about the relationship between variables. Now, since we are talking of relationship between variables, this is specifically with a quantitative type of studies. So in qualitative studies, they do not have a priori of hypothesis, because with qualitative researchers or qualitative studies, the inquiry is to be guided by the informant's viewpoints or narratives rather than the hunches of the researchers. So to be specific with hypothesis is mainly focused on the quantitative research. So again, what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is a prediction about the relationship between variables, usually based from a theoretical framework. It states the expected relationship between your independent variable and your dependent variable. It is worded clearly and concisely and in present tense. So your hypothesis is really usually queries about relationship between variables, and research questions ask whether a relationship exists between variables in a particular population. In contrast with your research question, your hypothesis stipulates or predicts that relationship, if the relationship exists. So for your hypothesis, alignment, there should be cohesiveness and alignment of the theory, the research question, and the hypothesis. So a validity of a theory is evaluated through hypothesis testing. So for example, in our slide, we have the theory of reinforcement. Behavior that is positively reinforced or rewarded tends to be learned or repeated. For our research questions, if we have the pediatric patients, do pediatric patients cooperate with nursing procedures better if given a reward? So for our hypothesis, pediatric patients who are given a balloon tend to be more cooperative during nursing procedures than non-rewarded peers. Now we have two types of hypothesis. We have research hypothesis and null hypothesis. For research hypothesis, these are statements that are expected, statements rather, of expected relationship between variables, and this cannot be accepted or rejected by statistical tests. However, your null hypothesis states the absence of that relationship between the variables. It is accepted or rejected through statistical tests. Therefore, studies with statistical analysis has an implied null hypothesis. So for research hypothesis, again, these are clear, specific, and testable propositions or predictive statements about the possible outcome of a scientific research study based on a particular property of a population, such as a presumed differences between groups of a particular variable or a relationship between variables. So one would say that this specific independent variable has a relationship with a dependent variable. That is your research hypothesis. Null hypothesis, on the other hand, states that there's no relationship between the two variables, and you can determine this one through statistics, if either you accept or reject the hypothesis. So we have sample hypothesis here. For research hypothesis, there is a relationship between age of patient and risk for falling. And another example would be pediatric patients who are given balloon tend to be more cooperative during nursing procedures than non-rewarded peers. For null hypothesis, on the other hand, would state that there's no relationship between age of patient and risk of falling, and for pediatric patients who are given a balloon do not differ in their degree of cooperation as compared to their non-rewarded peers. On to our next topic, we have theories, models, and frameworks. Now, high-quality studies achieve a high level of conceptual integration. For frameworks are the overall conceptual foundation of a study. Not every study is based on a formal theory or conceptual model, but every study has a framework or a conceptual rationale. So high-quality studies achieve a high level of conceptual education. This means that your research questions, hypotheses, methods, and existing research evidences are interrelated with clear conceptual rationale, and that is your framework. Now, frameworks are usually a study based on a theory. We refer to them as your theoretical framework. And if a study is based on a conceptual model, we use the term as conceptual framework. For theories are an abstract generalizations that offers a systematic explanation about how a phenomena are interrelated. So we have components of a theory, we have concepts and relationships. For concepts, these are classical theories that comprise a set of propositions that indicate relationships among the concepts. Theory of planned behavior provides a framework for understanding people's behavior, as what we have mentioned earlier, and its psychological determinants. We might hypothesize on the basis of your TPB rather. For example, theory of planned behavior, that is your TPB, that compliance with a medical regimen, which is your behavior, could be enhanced by influencing people's attitude towards compliance or by increasing their sense of control. The other component for your theory is a relationship that would test or would tell that there is an association between variables. One example of which is your social cognitive theory. Social cognitive theory, this is from Bandura, 1985, 1997, and 2001. Self-efficacy determines the behaviors a person chooses to perform, their degree of perseverance, and the quality of performance. With Bandura, they identified 4 factors that influence a person's cognitive appraisal of self-efficacy. We have own mastery experience, verbal persuasion, vicarious experience, and physiologic and affective cues. There are a lot of studies that is anchored with the social cognitive theory of Bandura. So we have conceptual models. Conceptual models, on the other hand, are less formal means of organizing the phenomena than compared to your theories. So like theories, conceptual models deal with concepts that are assembled by virtue of their relevance to a common theme. So concepts that are assembled based on relevance to a theme, they are not formally tested. They provide a perspective regarding interrelated phenomena but are loosely structured. Another is your schematic models. Schematic models uses minimal words, visual representation of a theory or a conceptual framework. It uses boxes, arrows, and other symbols. Your schematic models would be your schematic diagram in your chapter 1 would be a good example for your schematic model, wherein you identify your independent variable, relating it to your dependent variable, and creating the output of the study, which you will be representing them with boxes and arrows. So for the nature of theories and conceptual models, they are created and invented. Theories and conceptual models have much in common, including their origin, general nature, and purposes, and their role in research. They are not discovered, they are created and invented. They are tentative because, in a sense, today's theory may be discredited and may be revised tomorrow. This happens if a new evidence or observation into an existing theory undermine a previous theory. So that's why it is tentative. It also organizes your concepts. It provides evidence and allows prediction and control of the phenomena. So we have 4 central concepts of nursing study frameworks. By the way, to continue rather for organizes concept, It allows the researcher to integrate observations and facts into an orderly scheme or fashion. They are efficient mechanisms of drawing together accumulated facts, often from separate and isolated investigations. And it allows also prediction and control of the phenomenon. It can also guide, your theories and your conceptual models can guide researchers' understanding of not only what the phenomenon is about, but also why they occur. So theories often provide a basis for predicting and controlling the phenomenon. Now, to proceed for the 4 central concepts for nursing study frameworks, we have nurses have formulated theories and models of nursing practice. These are the 4 concepts that are central to models of nursing. So we have human beings, environment, health, and nursing. So one example of which is Sister Callista Roy's adaptation model. It identifies adaptation of patients as a critical phenomenon. Another example would be Martha Rogers. By contrast, emphasizes the centrality of the individual as a unified whole, and her model views nursing as a process in which clients are aided in achieving a maximum well-being within their potential. So nurse researchers have been inspired by these conceptual frameworks in formulating research questions and hypotheses. So what is the role in research? What is its role in research? It improves conceptual clarity, basis of a testable hypothesis, organizing your framework. It would be your interpretative tool. It also provides direction to your inquiry. So that would be all for our topic for T2 or conceptualization phase. I will see you later in our VR for instructions on the activity and to also answer for your questions. Thank you very much for listening, and God bless.